Welcome to New Game Plus. This is a retro gaming podcast where three guys spend 7 days playing one old game and then we talk about it. My name's Dustin.
My name is Kenny.
Nolan.
And this is episode 479. It is a director's episode! We cannot wait to have Sasser join us to talk about the game that they selected. But before we do, question of the week. What video game is easy to learn but has an incredibly high skill gap?
So my mind immediately went to fighters. Street Fighter, Tekken. The more I thought about it, those are not easy to learn.
Yeah,
those
that's
are
what
some of the
Kenny's
hardest
saying.
games of all
Correct.
time to learn.
Yeah.
And also some of the highest skill ceilings in the world. So it's not Street Fighter, and it's certainly not Tekken. It's Rocket League.
Good answer.
Rocket League's premise, extremely
Good answer,
easy.
Good answer.
That is
Hold
a
the
good
trigger
answer.
down, drive at a giant ball, put it in the goal. If you go and then go watch someone who's a professional play the game, and
Me.
you will be like, "Yeah, I quit."
Yeah, because they
Not
don't
you.
spend in. Yeah, me. Because
No.
no. Because when you're first starting out on this game, it's four wheels on the ground. When you're watching pros, I don't know if they touch the ground.
They don't really touch the ground; they touch the wall, and then like they'll
Sometimes-
grab the boost, get back on the wall, and jump off the wall.
They bounce off the ball. They reset on the ball in the air. It's ridiculous.
It's really impressive. It's actually an awesome thing to watch if you've
It
never
is.
seen a pro
It's
match. But
also
Rocket League.
an awesome thing to play.
It is fun.
Yeah,
Although I drag you guys down.
going up.
Going up.
Yo,
you do.
you go up, Kenny. You don't go down.
I do.
Kenny
I don't. My feet don't stay on the floor, which makes me a professional.
We call them tires. Kenny, your answer that is your answer to everything.
I mean, my answer can't be as good as Nolan's because he just nailed it. Although his first thought was terrible. The fighter games are hard to learn. So I'll throw two things in the ring. I don't think either are quite as good, but I think they're both fair. Tetris. I was waiting for a
You're
reaction.
gauging a
but
reaction.
Dustin hates Tetris.
Well, no,
so I don't know.
sure,
I'm
I do
shaking
hate
my head.
Tetris. I agree with you, but I'm just scared because I had 3 answers written down. 2 of them have been taken, and you're about to say the third one.
Oh,
no.
well, how about I don't say my third one? Because the third one I was going to kind of cop out and just say a genre. Rhythm
Okay.
style games.
Then you shocked me because I was confident you were going to say chess.
I thought so
Oh,
too.
yeah, but I mean, it's true.
but it's not a video game, guys.
But it's just like,
Oh.
I'm over the fact that I like it. So,
Nolan's got a good point.
that it's not a video game?
Yeah.
I mean, I play it on the computer all the time.
No, I
That's
just
not-
did
oh,
this
come
to
on.
myself. I hate myself for this.
This is your own fault.
I had Rocket
We
League and
could've-
Tetris.
Okay.
That's insane. Why?
Well, I mean, those
That's
are the-
crazy. We've never done that before.
Kenny, what is your genre?
Rhythm games. So, think
Great
Guitar
answer.
Hero,
Great.
Oh,
All of
Guitar Hero is
those.
a good answer. good
Guitar
answer.
Hero.
Specifically because
Guys.
that
Yeah.
has a really expert mode's crazy,
Y'all are
and you can
litty.
even take it higher.
Y'all are litty mode.
don't
That's
say
not a
that.
segue. I was just feeling spicy.
Oh,
It felt
don't-
like one. It felt
don't
like one.
say
I'm not gonna lie.
This one
Oh,
is.
you make me
Video
so
games can be
uncomfortable.
difficult. Don't you wish there were more resources available to help break down these walls? Boom! Like in our retro game of the week, Blastcore.
Overview.
First things first, we'd like to welcome our special guest, director, Sasser, to the episode. Sasser, thank you for joining us. Take a moment, introduce yourself to us, to our community. Let us know a few things. How long you've been a part of the community, because I don't think it's been a short amount of time. How you found out about New Game Plus in the first place, and a little bit about yourself, and then why you chose, out of all games, Blastcore. Because I think you were maybe deciding between a few, but you selected Blastcore. So fill us in.
Yes, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on the podcast. It's been great listening to you guys for the past 2.5 years. So I'm Sasser. I've been part of the community on Discord for probably a little over 1.5 years. I've been listening to the podcast for about 2.5 years. I got into the podcast because I guess first and foremost, my main hobby is I'm a runner. And so I was looking for something to help me get in sort of a better space at the time, back in, I think it was August, early September of, I guess it would be 2022. and just happened to go through. I thought, oh, let me look at video game podcasts on Spotify, and you guys were one of the first ones that I saw. Looked intriguing. I love retro games. I don't really play a whole lot of newer games as it is, so I thought I'll give you guys a try, and I was hooked pretty much immediately, I would say. In terms of how long, the episodes that I've listened to, I would say, you know, I started out with, in terms of actually following the podcast, episode 347, which is Balls. Great one to start out with.
Nice.
And I've also been going through the backlog at this point, and I'm from the beginning. I am through episode, I think it's 106, which is Fire Emblem. I think it's the first Fire Emblem game that you guys played on the podcast. I've still not played a Fire Emblem game to this point, but I've listened to some of the other episodes in the middle of, in between those numbers. So about a little over half of the catalog, I'd say.
Do you listen mainly while you're running?
Mainly while I'm running. So
Okay.
that's why I get through, if I need to get up to a current episode, listen to that, and then I'll go back to wherever I am on the backlog and then pick up. Usually it's like 1 or 2 episodes a week.
Best guess, how many miles have you put in listening to NGP?
Listening to NGP. So I would say probably on the order of, I would guess close to 2,000 miles.
So more than the three of us have run in our entire life combined.
Yeah.
I haven't even walked
I
that
guess
much.
so. Yeah. I mean, I go fairly quickly. I probably, I average about 8 miles an hour. So, run the numbers on that.
That's a car.
So
That's a car. Nolan drives around
Dustin-
everywhere
Dustin
really
is-
Car going over a
slowly.
speed bump.
Dustin is dumbfounded because he don't run. He doesn't
Well, no.
understand running.
I'm not running unless something's chasing me. I do walk, and I listen to things, but 8 miles an hour is not a slow pace.
No, it's 7.5 minutes on average.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Pretty
Man.
good.
Well,
Yeah.
that I guess if you ran slower, you could listen to more New Game Plus, but you're just too fast. No, if
That's
you run,
not how time works.
that is absolute. What are you talking about? If you run
No,
slower,
I agree with Dustin.
Thank you, Sasser.
I would be through more of the backlog. I'd be, episode 130, 140 at this point instead.
Okay, that's
No,
fair.
no,
You're
Kenny, you don't know
running
how
for
time
longer,
works.
so you're listening for longer.
my goodness.
Somebody that's listening needs to make a meme and put in Discord of Rocky jogging up the steps, but it's our podcast instead of the music.
It was very specific, Nolan.
It'd be funny.
Anyway, as a quick aside, I am wearing the New Game Plus wall meet shirt.
Love
Me
it.
We got it last year, so
Represent.
I'd like to rep that here on the podcast. So, as
love
far
that.
as the game of the week, so the reason why I selected Blast Core, I would say there are two primary reasons. Number one is that it was a game that I ended up playing a lot of for no particularly good reason. Given that it's originally, it's a bit of an outlier in terms of popularity. It didn't sell very well. I think it only sold maybe not quite 1 million copies on the N64. It's not on the top 50 list. So I want to do something that's maybe a little bit lesser known, but then also on a more personal note, I have a friend who, also games a lot like me, but we didn't have the same tastes most of the time. But we had a couple of games, and usually they're really off the wall, they're really quirky games like Earthbound. He's not an RPG guy, but he really loves Earthbound. It was the same thing with this game. So Blast Core was one of those games that we bonded over when we were growing up. So J-Bomb 7, if you're listening, this one's for you.
Named
Right on.
from something in the game. Love that. And that's his birth name, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
Christian
yeah.
name.
The J in J-Bomb is for Jay.
Nice. Kenny, tell us about Blast Core.
Blast Core is a Nintendo 64 title that came out in 1997, developed by Rare. So you're probably familiar with a number of their titles that are more popular than this one. Perfect Dark, Banjo-Kazooie, Jet Force Gemini.
Say the one.
You say the one.
Nolan
GoldenEye.
did.
Everyone likes GoldenEye more than I do, so you guys can. Perfect Dark is a better game than GoldenEye. That's a different podcast episode. This
we have
game is basically your, I don't know, 5-year-old self's playtime in the sandbox incarnate. You are driving around vehicles and destroying stuff. Thankfully, and we'll talk about the deep story impetus here, but thankfully, you're saving the world over and over from nuclear destruction, and you do it creatively with a series of both vehicles and vehicular-ish robots, while you kind of puzzle your way through a number of both sort of like main quests and side quests. And if it sounds like I'm a little bit confused how to describe it, it's because this game is a lot. It's a little bit of an amalgamation of different things sort of all jumbled together into some mid-90s goodness.
This was Rare's first game for the Nintendo 64. Interesting.
I buy that, actually.
They developed it before the N64 was even, released. So the development process began. So they were working on like emulators rather than just actual hardware. Super interesting. So super early, and a relatively small development team worked on this. All of these things are probably not too surprising for someone that has played this game, because it is, hopefully this is not offensive, but I would call it rudimentary in that, I mean, Kenny said it, in that like this is your childhood in a sandbox destruction kind of thing. So it's not the most, you alluded to, it's not the most robust story, not that it needs one. It's not the most robust graphics, not that it necessarily needs it. It's not the most robust systems and everything like that, but it's just a playground for destruction.
Yeah. And also another fun fact that's related to the podcast. If you listen to our N64 relaxing playlist, which is high chance that you did because there's a ton of views, I did confirm one of the tracks from that playlist is from Blast Corps.
You did confirm.
Which you would think would be a relaxing song from a game that is about demolishing everything.
Yeah.
I can tell you which song isn't.
Right. Because
list.
this game is full of like crazy banjos and kazooies. It's all over the place. There were other names that they considered, the producers, publishers, whatever, considered for the game. Would you like to hear them? I mean, they landed with Blast Corps, but...
No, but you can say.
No.
Okay.
Majority vote.
I want to hear them.
Sasser, you're the tiebreaker.
Two.
All right.
Yeah, I want to hear them.
They thought about Blast Dozer, better or worse?
Worse.
Worse.
Even.
We're going to have to be quick here. Heavy Duty Heroes?
Worse.
Heavy-handed. No way.
Blast Radius?
That sounds pretty cool.
It could work.
I'll also go worse here.
And finally, Power Dozer.
No dozer.
No, apparently I
dozers.
like dozers. I've
No.
said yes to both things that have the word dozer in them.
I like Blast Radius a lot.
Also, Kenny, are you going to tell us a little bit about the story behind this?
I mean, I was going to save it for when we talked about gameplay, but I shouldn't. There's a nuclear weapon being transported on a truck, but the truck is out of control. So think Speed meets Oppenheimer meets Bob the Builder, and
Wow.
you've got Blast Corps.
And you have nothing.
You've got to knock down the buildings so that this runaway truck that's hauling nukes on a unwavering predetermined course doesn't run into things and kill a bunch of people.
That is a ridiculous premise.
It's so ridiculous, and it's one of those games that the more you think about it, the crazier it all is. But the point is not to think about it. The point is to drift
Smash.
your dump truck into the side of a building and knock it down for $1 million.
Yeah, I wonder who's paying you for knocking all the buildings down. Maybe the government. To promote the game, Nintendo released a 3-part comic detailing the game's story in Nintendo Power issues 97 through 99, and it was later compiled into a graphic novel by Dark Horse. And I was this close to buying a copy off of eBay this week, but it wouldn't have gotten here in time for the recording, so I thought it wouldn't be worth it. But builds out a story that is not needed. And so it is what you said. It's a nuclear truck gone rogue. But here's the thing that's so, I mean, it's just over the top to begin with, but the truck goes rogue in the first few panels of the first issue. Blast Corps doesn't arrive on the scene to destroy the first building until halfway through the second issue. Meaning,
You got to set it up.
yeah, I know, but
the world build.
that's a long time for that truck to just travel.
I've seen
Well,
some
yeah.
head nods from Sasser. You've read these?
I used to have those issues of Nintendo Power. So I've read those comics, and I think if I recall, and it's been a long time, but I believe that entire first issue was dedicated basically toward the backstory. Like they get to the carrier leaking and starting to go on its route, but then they're really talking about the backstory that you don't have in the game about Wesley's injury. And then how Blast Corps actually came to being being separated from the military and all that. So they took that part and put it in the first issue, and then they finally
Wow.
mobilized in the second issue.
Yeah. And so,
Did we need this?
yeah. If you want the robust story to why you're tearing down all of these buildings, you'll find it in Nintendo Power 97 through 99. We now have a bonus episode exclusive for those on Patreon.
Episode is not an over-exaggeration. It's a full episode.
And it's an episode that you get to be a part of.
Yeah, it's called Expansion Pack, and semi-regularly, you get to be a part of the conversation, and we're going to debate, and we're going to scream at each
We're
other.
going to talk about
Have
video
arguments.
games. Yeah, we're going to scream mostly, though. That's kind of the point of it.
Yeah, we'll be like goats.
You roast us, we roast you. Find out more information at patreon.com/NGP podcast.
Gameplay.
When I saw the cover art for this game and looked at some images, mostly when I looked at the images of the game, I thought, okay, this is a vehicular combat game because it kind of presents itself as that if you are just kind of looking at screenshots. But this game is nothing like that. In fact, it's a lot more akin to Rampage. You guys ever played Rampage?
Of course.
Smash the
Arcade?
buildings?
Monsters of
Then-
the buildings, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually that genre, and I don't know of too many comparisons that I can make to a game like this where the point is destruction. So that was one discovery, but then the more I played it, I realized it's also not simply mindless sandbox destroying as it is a puzzle game. Kind of. Are y'all gonna let me say that?
I mean, other people say it. I don't really see much
Sort
of it.
of.
Some stages.
There
Yeah.
are
Stages that have puzzle elements to them, but I think for the most part, most of the carrier stages that you're going through, you're not having to figure out how to do certain things like putting blocks into holes or moving other vehicles around in order to clear the path.
Well, I would still argue that it's got more puzzle elements than it does the vehicular combat side of things or some other genre. But the game is from a fixed angle.
Isometric, kind of.
Isometric. And by the way, I was a little concerned about camera because N64 camera lol. And it's actually fixed the whole time, right? Like it's actually quite solid, and I didn't really have much of a complaint, but it's just this isometric view of your dozer or motorcycle, or depending on what you're driving, smashing things. And it's very simple to pick up and play in that regard.
Your main task is to clear the way of the missile carrier. And so on most of these stages, the missile carrier starts and you're by it somewhere, and then you have to drive in front of it. And there are green arrows. They start green and then they turn different colors until it's red because the missile carrier is very close. But it's showing you the buildings that you have to demo to clear the path for the dozer. There are other buildings on the stage that you can demo for fun or extra money, millions of dollars. And then on those stages, there's also, Sassy, you're going to have to help me with it. It's like an abbreviation. It's 3 letters, I think. But there's these little light devices you have to drive over.
Yeah, RDUs, radiation dispersal units is what they call them, which is really just a ham-fisted way to say this is what we're going to add to make this part collectathon.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's it's kind of your collectathon. I mean, you don't really get anything for it, but you light up these RDUs, and
RDUs.
RDUs, yeah.
you do that around the stage. So destroy the buildings, light up the RDUs. There's some satellites that you can get connected with, and then on most stages there are additional vehicles. So you don't only have the one that you start in, but you can find sometimes.
Exit the vehicle.
You can exit your vehicle by using the Z button, the Z trigger, and a little person runs around and can get into other vehicles that are on the stage. That's what you're doing on most of what I would consider the main stages, but there are a large variety, and it's not unsurprising for Rare, a large variety of different style of stages, and a lot of like extra areas, bonus areas, things that you can do that are different from that. I think in all there's like 57 levels to go through.
Yeah, there's a ton.
I think it's worth pointing out that the sort of main mechanic is timed, and you're completing, save the nuke carrier from blowing up before the time runs out. But that really is just sort of like your first goal, because all of the levels you're allowed to go back and continue playing after you've gotten through that sort of main quest objective. And that's where most of those things Dustin talked about happen. There's also side levels that are separate and their own sort of quest, races, whatever else. But the main thing you're doing in these levels after you've kind of beat the quest is exploring the stage, figuring out some light puzzling. I wouldn't even really call it puzzling, mostly just sort of like, I don't know, interesting interactables, finding hidden content, and destroying everything. So I don't know, it feels very Rare. There's lots of things to do, and there's lots of like revisiting and tons of ways to play and bonuses to unlock that are tracked. And
Yeah,
time
that's where the
trial-
medal system comes in. And so, with the carrier levels, each carrier level has 2 medals that you can get. So the first medal, when you complete the stage, clear the path for the carrier, you get a gold medal for that. And then doing everything else within the level, getting all the RDUs, destroying all the buildings, and as part of that, freeing all the survivors, which sounds pretty morbid in and of itself. You do all those things, and then that gets you the second gold medal once you get that 100% completion. And so, the carrier stages, you get 2 medals for that, and then all the other stages, which we can just call bonus stages, all of those, depending on what you're trying to do, whether it's racing through a course doing 4 laps, or finding all the RDUs in a set amount of time, or destroying spheres or all the buildings on the stage in a certain amount of time. You do it fast enough, you get a bronze, silver, or gold medal for those also.
And each medal that you get increases your rank. So you go from like rookie wrecker up to world-class megalomaniac. You can actually go beyond that to Armageddon adept, and if you go one more past that, so you get all platinum, I think, or whatever the top medal is.
It's all platinums.
The title you get is You Can Stop Now.
that's so funny.
That's good. I thought you were gonna say it had something to do with Dozer.
No,
I would have been excited.
No.
Just say the word dozer and I get so pumped.
I'd like to know who on the development team was asked to do that, because all it is just an ascending list of, descriptor and then noun for demolishing or wrecking or destroying something. So, razor, megalomaniac, destroyer, anything like that. I would like to see how they came up with those and how they made it, make it sound more, more expansive as they went up the ranks. And then, the tongue in cheek, okay, you're done, you can stop now.
They probably just like shouted them across the room at each other until they like laughed at one of them, and they're like, "That's a good one."
And what you're doing mainly is destroying buildings, but how are you doing that? You have got in this game 8, I think, demolition vehicles. So you've got everything from like a bulldozer ram, like that rams, dump truck. The dump truck drifts. You can slowly take out buildings going head on, but your main thing is to like use a Mario Kart style drift into the building. You've got this lightweight buggy that is supposed to crash down on top of buildings. A motorcycle shoots missiles. A large truck pushes these outward rams. But then you've got what is probably most fun, and yeah, the J Money is on the front of the cover, but you've got these 3 robot mechs that do different things: fly, roll, shoots missiles, everything else.
Yeah, those are the J Bomb, the Thunder Fist, and the Cyclone suit. And
Nice.
I would say in general, the robot suits are a lot more fun to ride around in and wreck buildings in than the wheeled vehicles are.
Yeah, I like stomping buildings more than running into them personally.
You know what I
There's
like
also a
though?
cop car.
Yeah, there's actually a few vehicles that are not necessarily for destruction, but either for mobility. So the cop car, and there's a few sports cars. But then honestly, I'll tell you this. The vehicle that I don't know about enjoyed driving the most, but that I enjoyed its inclusion the most was the train. Why, Dustin? Why would a train interest you? I'll tell you this. The stage, I think it was called Ebony Coast. It was the stage that I enjoyed the most because it was the first to really challenge me, honestly. But at the beginning, you're in a ramdozer right by a train. And you've got to put the ramdozer on the train cart, and you kind of start parallel with the missile truck that's out of control.
Yeah.
So
you're kind of racing it.
And then you get in the train to race across the bridge to get to a destination that you then get back into the ramdozer to be able to push explosive boxes into buildings before the missile carrier gets there. It was just a fun
It's
little,
like a puzzle.
I guess.
Yeah, it's a puzzle.
But I mean, if normal driving, like in real life, is a puzzle, then I
Puzzle
guess
to some.
but I liked that because I don't know, it just gives you a few different options, not options, but it gives you different vehicles to drive, different reasons to drive them, and it kind of like when you combine one system with another, so like I don't know, just free driving of a train and needing to get this specific vehicle across the ocean or whatever to another to actually use it. And then it was like the time that was very thin on the missile getting to the buildings. It was, I don't know, that stage for me was a lot of fun, and I like driving the train. Sue me.
No, I think that's understandable. I like the one that has the side smashers.
You do like that one.
I do like that one. Yeah, it feels really good to hit 2 buildings at once. And like they clearly designed these stages to benefit some of those vehicles more than others. Yeah. And so I thought they got pretty clever with how they designed the stages.
Kenny, your favorite?
I had fun. Yeah, my favorite was just like the normal cars. Not because destroying buildings isn't fun. It is. But I really liked how they did the racing elements of this game. I felt like finding really cool shortcuts or the option of like, I'm going to destroy part of this track on my first go through so that my future go throughs I can make more efficient by like getting stuff out of my way. Felt like a really interesting hybrid of like a racing game and what this game is all about. And they were clever. So most of them, like once you kind of figured out where everything was, you could find some kind of silly shortcut and make the races almost trivial. But finding those and like preparing them and destroying stuff was a kind of fun challenge.
Yeah, some of those racing stages are, I mean, some of them are just really straightforward. They're not, you don't really have to think about them too much, but those tended to be the shorter stages. The ones that your timer was 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes to do 4 laps. Usually they intended you to have a shortcut to go through those, and they also intended you to do it in a certain vehicle. Like, for example, the pink car, the muscle car is what they typically called it. The muscle car was best used for off-roading, and so anytime you got into heavier terrain, it was best to use that car when you had shortcuts that went through heavy grass or mud or anything like that.
Sasser, your favorite vehicle or robot or thing to control?
I would say in terms of the destructive vehicles, I would go with Thunderfist. just because it's really just the animation. You've got this giant robot that's doing a somersault into a building and then it jumps up and
Yeah.
smashes it with a fist. I mean, it's really ridiculous. And actually, one of the things I found out, in doing a little bit of research on this was that the Thunder Fist was actually supposed to have two fists, but the developers, as they were creating this game, basically ran out of polygons. They couldn't render both hands appropriately like they wanted to, so they just kept with the one and then had the other arm just be the wires hanging out and things like that, which is really funny.
Oh, so
Wait,
good.
I actually love that. I thought that was a design choice. I didn't know that was something they had to do.
No,
Yeah,
that was a limitation.
You turn limitations into design choices. What are you
love,
talking about?
Yeah,
It could be
that's
both.
so. I think that's great.
Embrace it.
I also I appreciated their dedication to the theme of the game, to the point of the game. There aren't many things you can't destroy. There's a stage
Trees.
that is in a harbor, or there's like a port and there's a boat in it, and I was like, you can blow the boat up.
Oh, absolutely.
Like stuff like that. It's just the game. The game is meant to just be smash stuff because smashing stuff is fun, and they do a really good job of sticking to that, and just letting you do that the whole time.
Sasser, I'm assuming that in the times that you have played this game, you have beaten it. You've gotten to the end.
Yeah, I mean there are different ways that you can look at it. I mean, because this is an early Rare title, and we're talking late '90s, so they had a lot of collectibles or potential post-game content that you could have. We haven't even talked about the bonus levels after you finish the carrier stages and gotten the scientists. By the way, in order to finish the story, you have to collect 6 scientists that are hidden in some of these stages in order to actually complete the main game. But then once
There's
you
the
do
Oppenheimer, Kenny.
right,
Comparison.
but once you do that, you get access to literally it starts out with sort of a Billy Mays moment. But wait, there's more. And so then they get, the team gets tasked with doing a very quick clearance of basically a landing strip, because there's a space shuttle that is malfunctioning and needs to find a place to land. And so you have to clear a path for the space shuttle now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And really that just
True
means
ending.
destroying all the buildings. But then once you do that, then you can go to other planets and clear out space debris. And
Yeah, that's what I was
it's
talking about.
five stages that do that. As far as
What?
completion goes, I have, I've done all of that. At one point, this was probably early in college, I spent so much time on the game that yes, I did actually get all the platinum medals and the rank. You can stop now.
Nice.
That's impressive.
Wow.
Because
That's a flex.
probably that ranks way up there in terms of my video gaming accomplishments, just in terms of dedication to just because once you finish the bonus stages, then everything becomes a time attack. You're supposed to get the carrier, everything cleared out for the carrier in a shorter amount of time that you can, to get additional medals, and then you move up to platinum at that point, and that's when some of the times you have to clear get really ridiculous.
I think
this is one of those games that anecdotally, in the developers in talking about it, some of them were like, "Oh yeah, I can't do all of the platinum. Like I've done a few of them, but like I haven't done all of them." It's a fairly challenging game at the harder levels when you truly try and full clear it.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the amount of time that you would probably commit to completing the game, if you were just doing the carrier levels and basically none of the bonus stages, you might have to do a few of the training stages, where you're learning about the Backlash or Skyfall or Thunderfist, whatever. If you just focus on those, you could probably get through the 20 carrier stages in about, and that's not even 100%ing those stages. You can probably get through them in, I would say, 4 hours or so. Then to go through all the bonus stages, completing those 100% golds, you're probably looking at an additional 5-6 hours at that point. Then you do the moon, Mercury, all, the planets, where the fun part about those is that the physics gets really weird, because they're using more appropriate gravity physics for those planets. But you do that, those stages, probably get through those, it's less than an hour. But then to do all platinums beyond that, you're talking probably a good 15 to 20 additional hours to really commit to getting every part of your route optimized in order to get the platinum, and actually, be able to swing backlash efficiently to demolish all the buildings when it's just a backlash level. It's a lot.
That's way more hours than I would have thought this game has in it.
Some might say that this game is easy to learn, but has an incredibly high skill
Okay.
gap.
Some might say that.
Let's go to aged.
I would say that. They break it up. You have 5 easy stages, and that's just dipping your toes in the water. If if the carrier crashes into a building in one of those stages, help you on the medium and difficult stages, because those are going to be a fight for you.
Aged.
I love anytime you get music that adjusts to the intensity of what's going on. And they do that here sometimes, where as the timer is counting down, the intensity of the music will like ramp up. That's fun, and it kind of fits the vibe of this game of, oh no, you better get this done in time, and oh no, things are going to go really badly if you don't get it done. And so I thought that was a fun take on how to handle the music here.
The composer was Graham Norgate. You might not recognize the name, but Graham was also one of the composers for GoldenEye, which is a game that is superior to Perfect Dark. And so Graham had I guess maybe not at this time, but had some continued experience with Rare and composing some pretty good soundtracks.
Okay. That's a bit surprising to me.
And
actually.
also, one of the developers said that they didn't give direction to Graham for what kind of music it should be. Graham already, I guess, was somewhat, I don't know about legendary, but already had a name for himself at this time. Yeah. And so they just let Graham do what he wanted to. And so that's why, in part, this music, I don't know if it's the music you would expect for a destruction building game, but it's what it is.
Wait. I feel like the vibe of this game is heavily dependent on the music.
Yeah.
So that's so interesting that they were like, do whatever you want and we'll use it.
Yeah. And he did whatever he wanted.
Yeah, it makes for a weird juxtaposition though, because if you start the game, you're opening up for the first time, you get this really serious vibe music of, oh, we're in a cataclysmic situation here. You got to help us. And so it seems like it's going to take on this very serious, very, very serious tone. And then you start the first stage, and then you get the techno banjo and mouth harp going, like you're out in the middle of this, this backwoods town, needing to clear a bunch of buildings with the ramdos. You're like, oh, they're not taking themselves very seriously.
Yeah.
This is great.
Right. Yeah, as the music as a whole, I really enjoyed, and it did stand out to me. A lot of time, I say the opposite of a game. It fits, whatever, but this one's very listenable, and yeah, it kind of surprises you constantly as you're playing through the game. So I really enjoyed the music. I didn't even notice the time countdown thing, Kenny, I guess. I was
a few of the tracks that were sort of extra twangy were a little bit much for just my like personal taste. But again, it fit and it was consistent and it was well done. Also a little bit heavy-handed with the sound effects, but I feel like on a game like this, you kind of have to be like, that's the payoff moment when you're knocking stuff down and making them explode. And so overall, I think the music fits the vibe of what they were going for with the tone of the game. That means it's a little bit ridiculous at points, but that's not a bad thing here.
I think the graphics are serviceable, but anyone that would call them good or great, I would ask why.
See, I think it's context.
It is context
for
sure.
The Nintendo 64 at the time. I feel like they're pretty serviceable. Some of the textures are a little basic, but like they avoided having to do any of the like fog to like obscure distance that so many games kind of leaned on at this time because it was hard. It's like polygony, but not like bad like some of those Nintendo 64 games are. And a couple of the shots, that first cinematic shot where you're like moving through the canyon right next to that train as it's moving in, look really good for the time. They're not like the best thing that ever happened, but I think they're worth actually giving some credit for the game is kind of basic, but like they pulled it off.
I will say
think
the isometric angle helps a lot. It helped them maybe avoid you focusing too much on some of the polygons, but I disagree, Kenny. I think it looks pretty rough, and the UI is really rough, and the post stage summaries are really ugly. It's bad.
Y'all forget what the N64 was
Yeah.
about.
I think a lot of the limitations on the graphics are really based on when this was being developed, because they did not know exactly what sort of system they were working with. I agree. I think the worst thing is, as far as the graphics go, are really the background textures. Some of the, the grass elements, or things that they're not really. Pavement elements were okay, but anything that wasn't pavement looked bad. I think the lone bright spot in terms of the visuals for the game are the vehicles themselves. I think they put a decent amount of detail, given the limitations that they had at the time. Of, they have the Blast Core logo on top of the backlash. I don't know if you noticed that, but they actually have that detail on the vehicle. I think the motions of the vehicles are fairly decent, and I think they did a good job with that. Buildings. I think they just it was it's N64 graphics, it's polygons with very rough textures and appearances of windows and things that are slapped on there. But again, the idea is that you're going to be knocking these things over, so you're not going to see them for very long.
Yeah, they're
Right.
destructible. You don't want to make them look too good, because they're not going to be there for long, for sure.
I'm glad that they maybe sacrificed some of the visuals to make sure that the handling was more on point, and I agree with what you said, Sasser, about the cars and their handling. I actually thought it was above average for the N64. So much so that it's like when you think about the N64 controller, oftentimes we talk about controls, and we already mentioned camera. I think camera's actually, I think it was smart for them to not make the C buttons like you can move your camera around. I think it would get messy and crazy.
You could move the camera around a
and
little bit,
with-
but there were a lot of limitations to it.
Yeah, they wanted to keep you kind of locked into that isometric view, if at all possible. And then when you think about that controller as a whole, I think it handles quite well for an N64 game that has you in a vehicle with four wheels.
Yeah, I don't think it does anything specific to the N64 controller. Like being simply just getting out of the vehicle could literally be any other button, so it doesn't do that, and whatever. So I think it works, but it could be on whatever other controller. I do think that some of the slowdown in the game associated with the destruction of the buildings is relatively significant. So while I agree, Nolan, the handling of the vehicle is pretty good. The slowdown when there's a lot of buildings being destroyed, the explosions, and I think it's somewhat random. So some buildings have one explosion, some have two or three or four, can really lag things out, slow things down. Another developer I heard say something like the explosions took up like an eighth of the cartridge. So a considerable amount of the cartridge at the time was dedicated to like these realistic explosions, which is necessary for a game like this.
Yeah, it's as it should be, considering the genre of the game. I also think it's worth noting sort of this unique genre, because sometimes we'll play an old game and it's like, this doesn't like future-proof very well. I would say that there is something sort of timeless about the silly, carefree nature of this game. It's a very different style of game, but to some degree, it reminded me of playing Katamari Damacy or something like that, where you're just doing something silly and fun and chaotic and just like vibing. And that just ages well for an old game to me.
I'm pretty sure you almost said that in your first play, but you got distracted by what was happening, so you never finished it by saying Katamari. But I think I knew that's where you were going, and you were the first, because you played the game first, but you were not the only in our community this week to also make the Katamari reference.
Okay, weird. Then I'm not crazy, which is
whoa,
a good thing to remember. I'm not crazy because of this assertion.
Thank you. This game was included in Rare Replay on Xbox One, so that's one of the more recent and easier ways to play the game.
I bet also the first that a lot of people had ever heard about this game.
Yeah, but I will say this is often talked about as a hidden gem. I don't know. I also saw a lot of people like arguing against it being considered a hidden gem this week because while yeah, you're right, Sasser. You said early on that that it sold close to 1 million copies. I don't think that's bad. It just isn't. It's not top 50 material. I think you said.
Yeah, it's
I
not
think a
top
lot
50,
of it is,
and it's definitely on the low side for a Rare title, right? Because I mean, Rare
Exactly.
had a lot of especially for this console, a lot of their big games they were in the top 15, top 20 as far as sales go. This was probably the worst selling of their
Sure.
titles for the console.
Which the first on the console should be.
Yeah, especially if you were developing on an emulator that you didn't even have the hardware yet.
Well,
And
and
I think the other thing to that though is I think from a marketing perspective, you look at the cover art, you look at the gameplay itself. A lot of games, you have some sort of mascot or something that you would typically latch on to, something that's recognizable. This game didn't have that either.
J Money.
So I mean, you had the vehicles that are on the box art, but again, like you said, you could be confused with a vehicular combat game.
Sure.
So that could turn some people off.
It's the genre for sure. I mean, they just went, and I love that they did, but they just went with something that was quirky, silly, fun, rather than something that I would imagine they knew this wasn't going to be like some staple of the console or of even Rare. But I'm glad they did because it was fun. If you want a cartridge for your Nintendo 64, it's actually not bad. $16 loose, and it has gone up in the last few years, but there's a lot of them. Again, it's not as well known as many of the other Rare titles. If you want it complete in box, $63, and if you want it new, $195.
See, I'm thinking that's going to be way higher than that. For a Rare title that's lesser known, I thought it'd be expensive.
It's not that rare.
Don't worry, Nolan. You knock down one building, and you can buy every copy of this game that's ever been made.
That's a good point.
Who's paying you?
Final thoughts.
At the end of each and every one of our episodes, we determine whether or not the game gets our vote for New Game Plus status, which is our general thumbs up or thumbs down. It does require 2/3 of the vote to swing one way or the other typically. Here's the thing. We don't often give our vote for New Game Plus status when a director is here. However, Sasser begged us to
pleading.
Get hands and knees, whatever that means. Give the vote, and set up front that he was completely fine if it did not get our vote. So, risking our friendship with Sasser, we are going to now share our thoughts, our final thoughts on Blast Corps. I'll begin by saying that its beauty is in its simplicity. It is, I'm just going back to what Kenny said at the very beginning, kid, sandbox, toys, destruction. That is what you're getting here, and it does accomplish that well. You drive around and you make things go boom. And there's enough of a game here, so it's not just that. Like you've got some competition, you've got some challenges, and then you've got a variety of vehicles to make it enjoyable. All of that being said, I do there's not enough substance there for me. It's not that I needed more story. It's probably just how odd of a genre it is. I don't typically like vehicle video games. I'm talking about vehicular combat or even racing or whatever other subgenres there are. This one I probably like a lot more than all of the vehicular combat games we played, so that's saying something. But it's still not a genre that really I had that much fun with or enjoyed. I needed something more, and I don't know exactly what that is. Maybe GTA. Maybe that's what I needed. A little bit more story. I don't know.
More crime.
It's fun. It did what it set out to do, and it did that relatively well, but it just didn't vibe with me. So no New Game Plus from me. I'm sorry, Sasser.
Episode's over. He's just leaving. Yeah,
Sasser's
he just
gone.
walks out of the room.
Somebody get him some medical attention.
We've played a lot of games,
Wow.
but nothing quite like this, which is always interesting when we're hundreds and hundreds of games in and you find something that's still a little bit novel. And I mean that both in good and bad ways. So most of the time, this game had me smiling in confusion, but sometimes it was more frowning in enjoyment. The premise is simple, the variety is over the top, most of the very varied mechanics are rewarding, and there's plenty of depth to explore if you do want a challenge, even if the core gameplay loop leans a little bit repetitive. I do think most people will like this game more than I did, but that does mean I liked it. So, I probably have similar mixed feelings to Dustin, but land on the other side of the coin. It was a fun enough experience for me to say, New Game Plus. But I wasn't like completely enamored with it either. Destroy stuff though, like can't complain. So New Game Plus for me.
Which I think, Nolan, it's in your hands as long as Sasser says yes.
Right.
So what did you think, Nolan of Blastcore? Sasser comes on and says no. We've had that before.
We've had that happen, yeah.
This happened, yeah.
With a vehicle game, wasn't it?
It all so happened that someone was like, "Oh yeah, I've never played that game before."
I've never played it.
We're like, okay. So I learned something this week about myself. If there's a car involved as like one of the main things in this era of N64, I'm out. I don't know exactly what it is that turns me off to this sort of gameplay, but it does. And Dustin, I agree with you. I think the strength of this game is that it's destroy and blow up stuff, and that's it, and have fun. And I think it is fun for a bit. And then I start to lose reasons to play it further. I do like that they added some things to collect, and like the time trials, and there's things to chase in this game, which at surface level does not feel that way. So that's good. If it didn't have that, then it'd be really bad. But yeah, I struggled to find a reason to come back to it, I guess, in terms of my enjoyment. So while I do like that it's very unique in the sense that it's a sandboxy kind of, like I compared it to Rampage. It gives me the same vibes as Rampage, and there aren't a ton of games that do that. But it's just not enough to for me to recommend it. And it was, I love N64, you guys know that, but it was past the point for me where I was like, oh yeah, this is pretty like dated. These graphics, everything about it feels very early N64 in a bad way. So no.
All right, Sasser, we're sorry. What are your final thoughts on the game that you so lovingly brought to our community this week?
I wouldn't necessarily say lovingly. I would say that this was the first time that I've actually come back to this game in almost 20 years. So my experience with the game, and the reason why I brought it up, was very much based on nostalgia, and I fully admit that when bringing this one in. I would say, I got far enough, and I made a point of getting through the main character stages and through most of the bonus stages this week. And I do have to say that, in terms of, the look isn't really great. It is very rudimentary, even for its time. I mean, the music is great, but again, I think that reflects more on the composer than anything else. I had a decent amount of fun. I think I'm very similarly in your camp, Dustin, in terms of the level of enjoyment that I got out of it. I definitely would not want to go back and do what I did almost 20 years ago and go platinum medal everything. And I think, as much as they tried to make additional content or additional incentives to keep playing, unless you're really big into doing time attacks or speed running for that matter, there probably isn't a whole lot for you here. But I think in terms of the premise, there is no other game that works the way that this one does. I can't think of another one like it, at least. And I know that, there was an interview with one of the producers, and he said that, we didn't make a sequel because we were basically tapped out of ideas at this point. So, if we were to make another game, it would just be a redux of the same, and that wouldn't be enjoyable for the audience, but it probably wouldn't be enjoyable for them as producers too, for the game. So, I do wish that there would be another game though that tried to do something like this. I think if you were to take a game, maybe even a multiplayer mode, like if you were to do something like what Portal 2 did, and you had, a two-player co-op and have a destruction mode based off of that, that could be a lot of fun. And you could be doing that with other people, which would be great. So, I think there is some untapped resource within this sort of genre that people could get into. I think this is a fun game to know about, but it's not necessarily a must play on my end of things either. So I would say, if nothing else, if you're a session gamer and you like the idea of just mindless destruction, sure, go ahead and get it. But if you like being entrenched in something for a while, probably best to find something else.
All of that being said, Blastcore is not New Game Plus certified. But what did you think? On our YouTube poll, 42% said yes, it's worth playing today. 8% said no, go play something else, and 50% have never played it before.
Some of us are still living the dream.
Of having never played it before?
No, of running around destroying buildings and just smiling the whole time.
The child in Kenny.
I would say, in terms of if you wanted to rate this, I mean, for me, this would be like a 6.5 out of 10. But if I were to actually give a recommendation for this game, you need to be at least like a 7 out of 10. So it's close. There's just not enough there.
I like that breakdown.
Many from our community played along this week and wrote in. Here are a few of your thoughts. The Emoticon Emperor said, I had genuinely thought I had added this one to the list myself, but now I think it may have already been there. But the fact that I would put it there, that's how big the game is for me. I got it for my birthday with a Nintendo 64 and Super Mario 64, and I still remember the gameplay and the feelings it evoked fondly. And I want you to know I platinumed every single one of those stages. I'm sure the visuals don't hold up, but I hope some people see the beauty in this. What was my first taste of destruction as a genre, and honestly a top 5 experience of its generation for me. Purely on nostalgia, I would trade in all my medals and give this NGP just to have that feeling again. Good or bad, cough don't let me down, Kenny cough. I can't wait to hear this episode.
I'm not the one that let you down.
I'm reading what Emperor said.
I know. I'm saying I came through for him.
This
Mission
would be
accomplished,
a great
Kenny.
first
It's a
and
failure
64
to the rest
game.
of us, I guess.
It would be a great what, Nolan?
First in 64 game.
Yeah, which it was for a lot of people, I guess.
Yeah.
Lapidius Landris said, where to begin? The infamous dump truck? Blow it up and move on. Being a fan of N64, I have to say there is a lot of fun to be had in its games. Blastcore is no exception. Starting off easy, letting you learn with gameplay was something I missed, as well as missing the time I used to have to fully enjoy figuring it out. I only had 2 hours to play this week, got up to the experienced Ravager, but felt far from it as the puzzle mechanics began to be applied. I'm hoping to get some more time in, though, as I enjoyed the nostalgia I got from a Nintendo 64 game. But in summary, it's a good game for those who like to destroy things, for a lady to say, you're just trying to impress me.
I've got to stop saying
we didn't talk
N64 is
about
my
all
favorite.
Yeah, we didn't get a chance to talk about the characters and the things that they say over the course of a stage. They're just really ridiculous. Again, this game's not really meant to be taken seriously.
And then finally, Grinch said, a few positive magazine reviews and a 5-minute section on the promotional VH tape Wie viel 3D haltest du aus? Were more than enough to spend all my birthday money on Blastcore 27 years ago, and I remember very well how much time I spent with this game chasing every gold medal and playing levels over and over and over again to reach perfection. Coming back to it these days definitely was a huge nostalgia moment, but the game's age started to show. I had a hard time finishing any level as I struggled to get the controls and the timing right, which was strange for a rare game and in stark contrast to the likes of GoldenEye or Banjo-Kazooie. All in all, with the over-the-top story and challenges and the many different vehicles with their distinct styles, it's a unique title. I am glad that I played it back then as well as this week, but I totally understand if people bounce off of it. For my part, however, thanks to Sasser for bringing it to the podcast.
Sounds like we all landed similarly. except for Kenny.
I mean,
Yeah, I'm glad to bring the experience. It's not necessarily.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
for some people it's going to hit, but I think for a lot of people, if they bounce off, and that's fine.
Yeah, but I even think, and this is, I'm sure there's going to be outliers, but I even think and Nolan might be one of them. I think for most people, there is some fun to be had. The question is how long will that fun last, and because what's not to love about utter destruction of buildings, Thank you for sending in your commentary, playing along with us, and we'd love to do that each and every week. Send in your commentary to ngppodcast@gmail.com or hop into our Discord. We've got a commentary channel there. We'd love to feature your thoughts as a part of our episode next week. Speaking of, it's time to put aside Blast Corps and randomly select the next game that we're going to be playing for the next 7 days. And it is... a video game
Oh, sick.
published by Namco
Sick.
okay.
and released on the Game Boy Advance
Super sick.
in Japan in 2002 and North America in 2005.
Okay.
That's a big gap.
That's a big gap. It is the third game in the handheld series, but it has a number 2 in its title.
Oh, I don't like that.
There also might or might not be furries on the cover. The game that we're playing for the next 7 days is Klonoa 2 Dream Champ Tournament.
Oh, we've played a Klonoa game.
Absolutely not.
PlayStation. Haven't we? PlayStation 1?
No.
No.
We have not. Nolan is just excited about the game once he heard that there were furries on the cover.
I could have sworn we played. What am I thinking of?
I don't
No,
know.
you were playing that game on your own time, whatever. it was.
Okay, get
There's
over
no
the
furries in it, dude.
I mean, look. No, we've certainly never played a Klonoa game. I've maybe somewhat heard of the series. Do you know anything about it, Sasser?
Think about it. This is the first time I've heard of this series, so this would be a new experience for me this week.
All right. Well, find a copy and play Klonoa 2 Dream Champ Tournament along with us this week.
Join us in Discord. All you have to do is go to discord.gg/newgameplus.
We want to say thank you to those of you who support NGP and make it your favorite retro gaming podcast by going to patreon.com. Of course, as a director episode, we want to start by saying a big old thank you to Sasser. Thank you for the game, for your time, for sharing your thoughts, for being part of our community, all the stuff. Truly appreciate it. Want to shout out to Bro Jim, Siegfried, and Tins as well, our other director level supporters, and to our many producer level supporters as well. You live in our hearts, including Alex. Wow. Let's try that again. Including Alex, Amarlian, Antonin, Ben, Cody, Craig, Daggety, Dan, Willett, Garlisle, Hallex, Harold, Hey Brother, J. Robert, Jake Jordan, Justin, Clint, Lepidius, Landris, Levi, Maxima, Megatroid, Miss Muso, Not Enough Dog, Radmax, Sajan, Scotty, Shane, Shauna, Snakematic, Spinny the Jet, Stephen Fox, Super Hypered, Swaggy, Taco Fish, Psycho Mantis, Thomas Turtle, Unbedavable, and Zion. We appreciate you.
Not Enough Dog is a funny name.
Pretty good.
You can follow us on our social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. Links are in the show notes. Listen directly on any podcast provider of your choice. Make sure you subscribe so that you are the first to get new NGP episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a kind rating and review. Our episode artwork was created by our friend Dave. Our video episode edited by our friend Dylan. Our audio episode was edited and produced by our friend Dan Willett. Join us next week as we play Klonoa 2 Dream Champ Tournament, the first time we're ever playing a Klonoa game on the podcast. Until then, I'm still J Money.
I don't know. I'm still blowing up some buildings or something.
I'm J Money as well.
Both of y'all always act surprised that y'all have to have a name here at the end.
You
We
think
are.
about it the whole episode?
No, but I
He
know that
writes
it's
it
coming.
down in his show notes before we even
Yeah,
get to
he
the
does.
show.
He does.
Look at my show notes.
He's a tryhard.
Look
No, he's a tryhard.
Sasser, who are you?
Somersaulting into gas tanks.
Thank you for having something
Dangerous.
solid there instead of just mindlessly spurting whatever comes out of your mouth. And this has been New Game Plus.